Creating cinematic orchestral music usually means spending hundreds or even thousands of dollars for the expensive libraries and plugins. And during my holidays, I've started wondering whether there is any chance or possibility to receive this professional film score sound using only free tools. My name is Kamil, and in today's video I'm gonna to show you how I created my free orchestral template using only publicly available VST libraries and in majority Cubase stock plugins with some exceptions. So firstly, let's listen to the demo track which I have prepared for this purpose, and after that I will walk you through the template, show you how the template was organized, which plugins were used, and even those plugins which are not directly available in the Cubase will be free to download. All the links in the description. So let's listen to the track. Now a quick word about how I'm using the patches and how the structure of template was made. So firstly, here in purple I've got my fast action patches, mostly ensemble sounds that I use for a quick sketching or to add extra energy in intense moments. In my humble opinion, they are not just for sketching ideas. You can absolutely use them to create a finished track, especially when you are on a tight deadline or if you are less experienced. It's simply easier to work in ensemble because you instantly hear the full harmonic picture of the sound. And most of my ensemble patches here are freebies from performance samples, beautifully programmed and incredibly satisfying to use, especially considering they are free. Okay, so next, blue tracks are all for strings from violins to basses, and for the strings I've used Berlin Orchestra, and like in most of free libraries we don't have full section legato, but we do get instead solo violin and solo cello legato, which can work really well layered on top of the traditional sustain patch to simulate legato. For me, however, the built-in Berlin Orchestra legato didn't feel convincing, so I decided to use free performance samples patches instead. For a free product they sound surprisingly good. In green we've got the woodwinds, adding color and expression to the arrangement. For the woodwinds my main issue was that the short articulations were way too loud by default in comparison to the sustains, so I had to bring them down for a better balance. As for legato, almost the same approach as for the strings, combining sustains with solo legato to make things more expressive. Moving forward, red tracks are for the brass section. The brass section has no legato at all in comparison to the strings and woodwinds previously, so in my orchestration I decided to trick just a little bit and stick with short articulation and some two-note intervals to reinforce the harmonic foundation of the chord. That way I avoid using sustain on melodies, which could sound unnatural without legato. So that should be all when we talk about the structure, and before we dive into the grab sections and the mix of it, let's take a look at the overall layout of the mixer and some settings which I have implemented. Firstly, EQ. I'm not really a fan of implementing EQ on each of the track by default. I always treat EQing as an additional tool which I implement only if there is need for that. So in this scenario I made a low cut especially for ensemble patches from performance samples to get rid of this low rumble and leave some space for other instruments. especially individual instruments, basses and cellos. The same approach was implemented also for violin 1 solo legato patch here. I've also panned some of the sections to enhance the reflection of the traditional orchestral seating, so if you close your eyes, it should feel like you are sitting right in the middle of the concert hall. Moving forward to other instruments, two specific things worth to mention when we see percussion and brass. Mainly for the percussion, I used additional tail reverb, Revelation. This is also stock Cubase plugin, in order to push it a little bit in the stereo field and to enhance the overall perception of the orchestra. This setting was also added to the trumpet short here. Secondly, small but important detail, for the gong patch from Berlin Orchestra, I used Cubase stock sound shifter. The reason was simple. The original recording was in a different key than the demo track I prepared. By shifting the pitch by 6 semitones, I could make it blend harmonically with the rest of the orchestra without it sounding out of the place. It's a quick fix, but it makes a huge difference in keeping the overall arrangement sounding cohesive. When you will use the template, you can simply turn off the plugin, or you can customize the level of pitch shifting to your own purposes. Overall speaking, the balance here is set so that the strings form the core of the mix, the woodwinds wave in and out with detail, and the brass sits slightly behind until it needs to come forward for the impact. The ensemble patches are blended decently so they add excitement without overpowering the main sections. So now let's move on to the group sections. Generally speaking, all instruments was grouped traditionally by the families, and each of the family members was routed into the dedicated group. This gives me global control over the entire section for balancing, tonal shaping and effects. One more kind of pro tip which you are probably familiar with: if you want to enhance control over the sound and flexibility even more, try grouping articulations into separate tracks, not only instruments. That way you can fine-tune dynamics, reverb and saturation individually for each playing style. Speaking of the string section, which in orchestral mockups often requires the most attention in terms of clarity, cohesion and depth, the first insert is an EQ, where I can cut the low end below 27 Hz. That prevents the strings from clashing with the low brass and percussion. I also firstly add a gentle boost around 2 to 3 kHz to bring out the presence, but later on I decided to bring those frequencies up only on the master track by using Fresh Air plugin. Speaking of saturation, I've used Magneto 2 for subtle tape saturation. It adds a touch of harmonic richness and helps glue the string section together, making it feel more like it was recorded in the real space, not just coming from VSTs. For reverb, I've got the LA scoring stage loaded up in the Cubase built-in reverence reverb. This was my favorite choice when we talk about free impulses for this work. It's got that Hollywood scoring stage vibe right off the box. I've set the size to 100, no pre-delay at all, and kept the early reflections balanced so the strings feel like they are in the same physical space as the rest of the orchestra. The idea is to create this depth without making things too washed out. Next up, let's take a look at the woodwinds group. First, I'm shaping the tone with a simple EQ cut in the low end. Then I'm adding just a touch of saturation as previously. It's subtle, but as I said, it warms up the tone and brings out those lovely harmonics. After that, I run the whole section through the same LA scoring stage reverb as the strings. This keeps everything in the same acoustic space, and that was my main goal when we talk about using reverb. Alright, here's the brass group, the section that brings all the epicness to the score. Speaking of an EQ, this is the same setup as previously, a little bit of low cut to prevent rumble noises. Next, I'm running everything through Magneto again for a touch of a tape saturation style. It gives the horns and trombones especially a little extra grit and presence, so they can cut through the mix without me having to push the faders too high. And next is the same LA scoring stage, again reverb. Speaking of the percussion, we have almost the same settings as previously, with one difference which is typical for mixing percussive instruments, so multi-band compressor. This is where I really control the dynamics, keeping the low end of the bass drum tight, while allowing the mid and high percussion to stay crisp and present. One subtle difference with the EQing, together with the low cut I also cut some mid-range frequencies, which was really annoying in this project, and fight each other with other instruments in some crucial places. And here is the master chain finally, as a final polish before the music leaves Cubase. First is Console 7 from Air Windows. It's a completely free but very interesting plugin that emulates the subtle harmonic behavior of an analog mixing console. It adds depth, width, and a certain glue that helps all the sections sit together naturally. Next in line is Magneto 2 again, which way of working is almost the same as the Console 7, but in my humble opinion those plugins together works really well and gives me even better result as if I would use only Magneto. Then I'm using Cubase stereo enhancer, just enough to give the mix a little extra width without messing up monocompatibility. So now let's listen how the mix sounds with and without the plugin, and in my humble opinion the difference is significant. After that comes Fresh Air from Slate Digital. This is a great free plugin for adding airy brightness to the top end. I'm using it really gently to bring out the shimmer of the strings and cymbals without making the mix harsh. I was almost forgot to notice that I've also got a subtle EQ here on the master chain, mainly to roll off unnecessary sub-bass below 30 Hz. Stuff you don't really hear separately, but that can eat up headroom and make over mix sound muddy. Finally, there is a limiter to catch any stray peaks and bring the overall loudness up to a good listening level. The goal isn't to crash the dynamics, especially in orchestral music, but just to make sure everything is balanced and ready to go. With this chain, the whole mix, in my opinion, feels warmer, wider, especially when we talk about the stereo enhancer, and more alive, while still keeping the natural dynamics that makes orchestral music so powerful. So to properly finish the walkthrough, let's listen to some of the crucial parts of the track with and without processing. And that's it. Full orchestral template in Cubase built on free VSTs and plugins. You can download the template, as I said, all the links in the description, along with the description of the plugins and VSTs used and other stuff. And of course you can and you should consider customize it to fit your own preferences. That's actually one of the most important things when we work with the templates, because once you customize it, you know where everything is located and it's easier for you to compose and navigate within your template. Hopefully this gave you some ideas and hints on how to build your own template, whether you're just getting started or you want to experiment with the free stuff. In my humble opinion, the limitation of free VSTs and plugins should be considered as an advantage, because they forces you to dive deeply in your knowledge about the orchestration and music production. And if you found this helpful, feel free to give it a like And if you want to see more videos like this about the orchestration, music production, etc., consider subscribing. Thanks for watching and happy composing!